Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today we are doing a little horror TBR. I am both a reader who enjoys horror and a scaredy cat, which is not an ideal combination, but that's just how it is. And I don't read a lot of horror, but I do enjoy it. There are certain kinds of horror that I won't read because I will actually get too scared, but I like some horror. And in recent years, I've realized that summer is kind of like the perfect time to read it. You would think horror is the best for autumn because it's like spooky season, but I actually kind of like reading it in the summer because I feel like my tolerance is a little bit higher because it's not as like dark and gloomy outside. Because of that, I've made a little horror TBR for the summer, and I'm hoping to get to at least some of these over the next few months. I probably will not get to all of them, and I'll probably end up reading some of them during spooky season anyway. But yeah, there is something really nice about reading horror in the summer, and I feel like I've seen people do that more lately. I don't know if I'm just noticing it more, but I read a few horror books last summer and I really enjoyed it, so I want to do it this year as well. So I have a whole stack of books to show you. To be fair, a lot of the horror that I read is not like super scary anyway, and a lot of it is like weird horror, but that's just what I like. I haven't really put these in any particular order, we're just gonna go through them. Starting with one that I've had for quite some time, it's Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. And this is like contemporary fiction, but it seems to have like some magical realism or fantasy elements to it. The story follows a mother who is at home full time with her 2 year old, and she's exhausted and lonely, and her husband is constantly traveling for work, so she has to do a lot of it on her own, and she's kind of naturally losing it a little bit. And then something happens where she either turns into a dog or a wolf or like something like that. I'm not entirely sure if she actually turns into that or just partly, because I read somewhere that she like sprouts a tail and starts growing fur and her canines get kind of sharp. So I don't know what that transformation is like, but it sounds both scary and kind of strange. I know this book splits opinions a little bit, but I just want to read it and see what I think. And I like some of the things that it says, like on the cover and on the back, like it's feral, unholy, funny, unnerving, and terrifying. I sort of have a feeling that this is not going to be too terrifying. It's more going to be like weird horror, but yeah. I can imagine turning into a dog or a wolf or whatever is a little distressing. Secondly, we have another one that sounds kind of strange. It's Jawbone, and this cover is also a little weird, but I really like it. This is at least in part set at a school, and we all know how much I love an academic setting. I'm not entirely sure how old the students are. I think maybe they're like teenagers. And the story is about this group of girls who it seems like they start their own kind of cult like thing, and they do these rituals and they become increasingly more dangerous, and something happens with that. And then there is a, I think, a literature teacher who gets really involved with these girls. I wonder if she ends up kidnapping one of them. She seems like she has some issues of her own, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going around and it sounds weird. I'm wondering if this is sort of like witchy. I wonder like what the rituals are, like what they're actually doing. This is a translated book as well. It's translated from Spanish, and I am very curious as to how like dark and terrifying this gets. There is a lot of horror, I think, to be explored with adolescent people and girls in particular, so that's going to be interesting. And yeah, I do really like reading translated books as well. I don't think I've read a lot of translated horror actually, so I think that's gonna be cool. I've also never noticed this crocodile on the cover before. I wonder if there's a crocodile in here. They are pretty terrifying, so I kind of hope not. Then we have a book by an author who I've read a couple of books by now and I've really enjoyed them, so I'm excited to read more. It's How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This follows a main character who I think both of her parents die, and she is dreading going back home and like cleaning out their house, but she has to do it. In part, she's dreading it because cleaning out that house is obviously not fun. And then also, she has a difficult relationship with her brother who still lives in this town, and she doesn't want to deal with that either. But then she has to go, and she gets there, and they start like cleaning out the house and they're getting it ready to be sold, but then it seems like there's something really weird about this house. I haven't read as many haunted house stories as I would like, so I'm excited about that. And then I did read somewhere that I think the mother in this story collects like puppets and dolls. So if that's a part of the haunting, that's gonna be really creepy. Funnily enough, I actually grew up in a house where one of my parents collected like porcelain dolls. And that sounds creepier than it was. I was actually just upset because I couldn't play with them because they were very fragile and they were so pretty. And I remember just wanting to play with them. So it wasn't as creepy as maybe this is gonna be. We did have like a really scary witch though hanging in our house. It was like a sort of puppet thing. And I remember having to like run past it, especially when it was dark, because it really freaked me out. But that's not really relevant to this video, I guess. So tangent aside, I'm very excited to read this. This next one also sounds really good to me. It's How to Survive a Horror Story by Mallory Arnold. And just the setup of this sounds really good and kind of mysterious. It's about this infamous author who dies, and at the reading of his will, there are all of these writers who have been summoned there, and they are assuming they're going to get a piece of this massive fortune. But they actually end up playing a game in this huge house where in each room they have to solve some sort of like riddle or puzzle to progress to the next room. And then if you don't solve it, I think you die, which sounds really stressful. I read somewhere that it said that this manor or this house where they're at, like the house is really, really hungry. And I don't know what that means, but it sounds really creepy. I am curious as to how the tone of this is going to be, though. If it's more like humorous but dark, or just like dark and mysterious. I'm getting the sense that it's maybe like a little bit humorous. I think it was because when I got this book, it said like if you like the book Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, you might like this. And there is some humor in the writing in that, so I thought maybe it would be the same in this. But either way, this combination of like mystery and horror sounds really good to me. We also have a book by Kingfisher. It's The Twisted Ones. And this one I will not be reading when it's dark outside because it actually sounds really creepy to me. And I've read a lot of books by this author, and I've read some of her horror books, and especially one of them did actually freak me out quite a lot, and I still think about that book a lot. And I just think that if this is the same kind of vibe, like she's really good at writing horror, I will be reading this in the daylight, because if I don't, I will get super scared. It's about a young woman who goes to her dead grandmother's house in North Carolina to clean it out after the grandmother has passed away. And the grandmother is a hoarder, which obviously makes this a very big task. And I think when she's cleaning this house, she comes across her grandfather's diary and she starts reading it, and some of it is like super weird, and she's thinking like maybe he lost it a little bit at the end, and it mentions things that are like really scary but obviously not real. But then she starts coming across some of the things that are in this diary, and just that sounds so creepy. And I just have a feeling like, based on the cover and everything, and I think I've read this somewhere, this house is like in the woods. And I think the atmosphere of that is gonna really freak me out, but in a fun way. As long as I read this when it's not like super dark outside, I think I will be fine. But yeah, it sounds super creepy. This next one has kind of like a weird cover, but I really like it. It's Necrology by Meg Riley. And this is like historical fiction, horror, fantasy, all mixed together. And part of it, at least, is set right after the Salem witch trials, where women with magical abilities have to sign this contract saying that they're never going to use their magic. And 200 years later, there is a headmistress at an orphanage who suddenly sprouts antlers, and this is like a sign of a violated contract. So I'm guessing maybe this contract is for everyone who also comes after these witches that signed it. Things get very complicated after that. I'm not sure I'm totally grasping what happens, but there is something about an 8-year-old cursing someone who then dies, and I think the headmistress is blamed for it, and she has to go on trial. And maybe history repeats itself. I don't know. The mix of like historical fiction and horror and fantasy I do often like, and I wonder how the horror shows up in here. If it's just like the antlers and it's just weird, or if there's other stuff. But I'm very interested. I've never heard anyone talk about this book, so I don't really know what to expect, but it sounds like my kind of weird horror. In addition to this cover, I also actually really like that the spine of the book is an actual spine. This is actually one of the things that makes me think there might be some really horrible scenes in here, but we'll see. Then we have a vampire book. It's Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jagger. And this is about an ex-Catholic woman who starts a sexual relationship with a vampire. And she, like, I think their relationship is based on her confessing her sins to this vampire, which sounds really weird. And honestly, it just sounds like a weird book in general. But then if you're sleeping with a vampire, maybe it's bound to get weird anyway. I do think that the exploration of religion in combination with this vampire thing could be interesting, but I don't really know what to expect from this. The reason that I got it is that some other people who like the same kinds of weird books as me like this. That's what makes me think I'm gonna like it as well. But I'm just gonna have to try this and see. I don't really have a lot of expectations, except maybe the fact that it's gonna be a little strange. We have another weird house situation with this next one. It's Slade House by David Mitchell, which is about a house that can only appear under certain circumstances. So if the circumstances are just right, this house appears, and a stranger might be invited in. And it's really great at first, and you'll find that you don't want to leave, but then when you do want to leave, you might find that you can't. In the house, there is a brother and a sister, like they are the owners or the residents of this house, and I think they invite someone in every 9 years, and they always pick someone lonely or someone who feels different to everyone else, and I guess they invite them in and keep them there. Maybe they don't keep them there, maybe they do something to them. I don't know. It sounds a little scary when I think about it, but I'm intrigued to read this. It's also not that long. It's like 200 pages, so if it is really scary, it shouldn't take me too long to just like finish it and be done with it. But I do like the idea of this house, and I'm curious about this brother and sister and like what's going on with them. It sounds creepy. I also really like the cover for this next one. It's Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna von Veen, and this is a book that I am contemplating saving for autumn, actually. I don't know what I'm basing that on, maybe just like the cover and the vibes, but then I'm also thinking, like, this is a vampire book, which is why I'm thinking maybe I should save it for fall, but then I can never get to all of the books that I want to read during fall anyway, so maybe I should just read it now. This is also historical fiction. It's set in the Netherlands in 1887, and we meet a set of twins in here. One of them becomes, like, increasingly unwell after she finds, like, the corpse, like a really long dead corpse in her husband's house or, like, on the grounds. And she becomes obsessed with this, but also she gets sick somehow. And the other sister is trying to figure out what is the deal with this person that they found, and also what is going on with her sister, because she wants to try and keep her sister out of, like, getting put in an asylum. And then her sister gets, like, weirder and weirder, and she becomes really angry and really hungry. So I think we can guess what has happened to her. I really like books set in this time period though, and I'm curious about the vampire element. I think I keep saying that I want to read more vampire books, but then I never do. But I do have quite a lot of them, so I just need to like get around to reading them. Then we have another kind of weird one. It's The Starving Saint by Caitlin Starling. And this is also historical fiction, but I actually don't know what time it's set in. I think, yeah, it says medieval horror, so it's set in medieval times. The story is about this castle that is under siege and has been under siege for 6 months, and the people in the castle are like running out of food, and they're gonna die. And then some sort of saint arrives, and their food storage is replenished, and the sick are healed, and all this saint wants in return is adoration, or at least that's what they say. It seems like things get really weird though when I actually don't know if it's one saint or several saints or like several magical beings or whatever it is, but these people who come to the castle, they start having these like weird intoxicating feasts, and it seems like all of the people in the castle are like falling under the spell of the saint or saints, except our main character, who I think is some sort of sorceress or witch, which is interesting. And I think the story is about her trying to like break the spell that these people or the saint has put on all of the people in the castle. And it just sounds super weird. I really like the idea of this though, and it does say actually on the back a quote from T. Kingfisher. And I usually don't care about like author quotes and stuff because sometimes, even though you like the author, you don't like the books that they like. But she does mention cannibalism. I actually don't know if I knew that this book was about that, but that's interesting. Oh my god, do they start eating each other? Is that how the food storage is replenished? Oh my god. I do like the idea that the main character is like a sorceress, though, or a witch or something. That is very interesting. I think maybe I knew that when I picked this up, but I can't remember. But yeah, I think this is going to be really disturbing. Second to last, we have Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. And this one is a little bit different because it's about a flesh-eating plant who falls in love with a human but also wants to eat her, which is scared. We follow a woman in here who has had a lot of change in her life. She's lost her job, she's left her fiance, she's moved back in with her parents, and she decides to start working in this like flower shop, I think. And guess what's in this flower shop? There is a flesh-eating plant in the back, I guess, who just wants to eat everyone. It says it's a story about possession and monstrosity and working in retail, which I do actually think is quite interesting. There is something horrific sometimes about working in retail. I worked in retail for many, many years, and especially at the end, I think in hindsight, there were some good things about that as well, but I really did not enjoy it very much. And I didn't have this plant, but I did have many fights with this like huge printer lab thing that was like the bane of my existence. And I still sometimes dream about the noise that that machine would make if the paper got jammed. Like, I think that noise is gonna haunt me until I'm in the grave. But at least I didn't have a plant trying to eat me in that store, so that is something. Lastly, we have one that is more like, I think there are some horror elements to this, but it sounds like it's mostly just like fun and a mystery, supernatural kind of situation. It's The Stranger Times by C.K. McDonnell. This is about a newspaper, I think in Manchester, which is dedicated to the weird and wonderful and sort of like occult things, I think. And this newspaper seems like quite the place. The editor is like a drunk and he's really mean. The rest of the staff are like misfits, and I think we follow the new assistant editor. And on her first week on the job, they come across this case that they need to investigate. And as they do that, they realize that some of the cases that they've looked into before and decided are just nonsense are actually not, and it's actually true. And that all together is like really terrifying. I'm getting the sense that the vibe of this is very much like sort of humorous, and the tone is going to be more humorous and it's more like a funny read. But I am very curious as to what the supernatural elements are going to be. I do like the idea of following this group of people working at a newspaper, though. That sounds really fun. That was the last book in my stack, though, and I'm really excited to get to some of these. I'm seeing based on the stack that I'm definitely like leaning more towards like weird horror and like vampires and haunted houses, like books in that sort of realm. If you've read any of these though, I would love to hear what you thought, and especially if you feel like one of them in particular is great to read during summer, I would love to hear about it. I would also love to know if you have any horror books on your TBR for the summer, and as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!